Today we're filming from the Circle and Cavill penthouse, which we just sold at auction last week for $3.2 million with 8 registered bidders. Quite a story in itself, but a real reflection of what's happening in the marketplace at present. But what reason we're here is we're interviewing today Mr. Tom Panos, who is the General Manager of Real Estate for News Corporation. Of course, news have been very topical recently with the proposed merger or buyout of Time Warner. And this shows an incredible investment by News Corp into media, both of course digital media and print media. And Tom is a fascinating person. He travels right around the country, gets a great insight to the real estate market. And I thought it was worth sharing with you a few ideas. But thank you, Tom, for joining us here
Thanks,
today.
Andrew. Thanks for having me here in this great property.
Tom, I do find you one of the most interesting people to talk to about real estate right across the country. Not only, of course, News Corp, very heavily into print media. Here on the Gold Coast, we have the Gold Coast Bulletin. In Queensland, we have the Courier Mail. And of course, on the national stage, we have the Australian. But News Corp also have a very big investment in realestate.com. And so you see the full spectrum of what's happening in the marketplace. I would have thought that we all observed that the market cycles have changed. They used to be 7-year cycles, and you could pick the time to enter and exit markets. But it does seem to have changed for me in recent times. I was wondering what your perception of the real estate market is at present.
So I think, Andrew, the biggest change to me is that when people used to ask you, what's the market like, you'd answer it, and that meant the answer for the whole Australian market. Now, when someone asks you, what's the market like, what you've got to do is actually make an answer that is about that specific market. So Australia is in fact made up of lots of sub-markets. So as we speak right now, whilst the Gold Coast market is strong, there's momentum and energy, I can tell you that there are other parts of Australia where they're saying, oh, there's not as many buyers as there used to be. So what we clearly know is that there is not one market, there's lots of sub-markets.
You just touched on the Gold Coast property market. What's your perception?
This is the best I've seen for me living memory. And what I mean by that is that over the last few years where I've been very heavily involved in the Gold Coast market, I've constantly seen that real estate agents have spent most of their time and energy trying to grind a negotiation up with a buyer. All of a sudden, I see the market actually doing the negotiation. I think the smart buyers have worked out, if I buy a property today, I'm probably saving myself $50,000, $100,000 than if I buy it in a year or 2 years' time. And that's why all of a sudden there's this big chase by real estate agents to get the listings, because buyers are going to agents, they are making offers, and they can sense that the Gold Coast marketplace is in good shape.
Well, a couple of questions following on from that. If you were talking to a buyer today, what would you be advising them about our marketplace? How would they go about finding the right properties?
Okay, so one of the things I'd say to them is that what they should do is not get like, Andrew, a lot of people say, do your analysis, do your analysis, do your analysis. I believe that you can get into paralysis by over-analysis. Yeah. I believe you can become the sort of person that becomes a valuer and not a buyer of property. What we know is that time in the market is probably the most important thing. So I would say buy a property more on how you feel about it, because the feeling that you have about a property is generally the time when you sell. That's the feeling that people have as a buyer when they're buying it. So buy something that you're emotionally connected. What we know, Andrew, is that real estate is different to being a commodity where you say a Toyota Prado, or if you're looking at a plasma TV, we know that that TV's got a certain price no matter where you go. On any website, it's going to be the same by about 5%. But what we know about real estate is that if someone must have something, if they love it from the bottom of their heart, that they will pay a premium. And that premium can vary up to 25% from one buyer to another. So what I'm saying is, think about buying emotionally and then justify it logically, because that's what real estate's all about.
We share very common thinking in that I often say to people, it's not just buying bricks and mortar. You're buying a dream, you're buying a lifestyle. Here on the Gold Coast, for example, buying something close to the beachfront means not only do you have a spectacular view, but you can get out on that beach, you can go for a swim in the mornings, you can throw a fishing line out in the afternoon, you invite your friends around and you can sit on the balcony and enjoy the spectacular outlook. And so there's a dollar value in that as well as the bricks and mortar. Likewise with a home. You want a home that you're proud of having friends around, that the kids can grow up and enjoy, the size of the backyard and so on. So there's much more to real estate than just bricks and mortar.
I mean, you've eloquently said something that I tried to say there. That's why you've got the #1 office for 21 years in a row, Ray White. You've got a good ability of transferring that feeling, but you're absolutely spot on. Like, you know, I was here holidaying with my family not too long ago, and when we were looking at property and considering it and researching it and shopping it in our heads, what we were doing is we were buying the run at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. We were buying the swim. We were buying the things you get. We weren't buying the four walls and the roof.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Now, on the reverse, what advice would you be giving to sellers in this marketplace at present?
What I would say is don't mismarket your property and regret it later. I'd say that you have one opportunity to improve your net worth. Spend more time on doing that right than what you do planning your holidays, which I find surprising that most people will sit around and look at a travel brochure and do their research and spend less time in actually going for a strategy of house price maximisation. I would say success leaves clues, go with the big ones. You don't want to be a guinea pig when you're selling your property.
Yep.
You don't want to be the person that's going to a doctor that's going to have that doctor perform that first operation. You want to go to someone that's done that operation thousands of times. And don't get me wrong, we're not curing cancer here in real estate, Andrew, but we are talking about, like this property here, $3.2 million. The reality is, you get an agent that performs a job badly, they can cost you, 10%. That's $300,000 that's left on the table. So I think it's a really serious decision. I think that there's a process that we know that gets prices at a premium, and they are homes that are well marketed, that are handled by real estate agents that know how to negotiate, that use a strategy called competition. So Andrew, we know that competition is what wins records at the Commonwealth Games. And we know that competition is what got this property to $3.2 million.
We have a saying at the moment for a seller, don't leave anything behind. You only get one chance to sell a property. You want to make sure you've done everything to get the maximum price.
How will you know you've achieved 100% of the result in your property if you're not using 100% of the marketing resources available to you?
This will be an interesting one for you. There's been quite a battle between digital media and print media. And the battle continues, and in fact, I've seen in recent time that print media is starting to do a bit of resurgence. So this is an interesting observation for people in the marketplace, and I know many agents in the marketplace say to people, you don't even need to use print media anymore. What's your observation travelling around Australia?
I'm biased in a number of ways. I'm biased because I work for News Corp, and we sell print advertising, the Australian, the Gold Coast Bulletin, Courier Mail. I'm biased because the company I work for also owns 61% of realestate.com. So you're obviously going to hear Tom Panos say, you need to be in the Gold Coast Bulletin and you need to be in realestate.com. But what I will say is this, that the internet is really good at getting the researcher, the shopper, and they're important people because they do become buyers. The Gold Coast Bulletin is very important because it does appear to find the buyer. And the reason why is when someone's in the Gold Coast Bulletin, they're a serious seller. And serious buyers are attracted to serious sellers versus the thousands of listings that sit on a website. So I would say that you need a combination of the two. The other thing, Andrew, what we noticed is that the internet seems to get what I call the intellectual buyer, the one that is very rational, that does a lot of research. In fact, they use the same methodology that a registered valuer does. They sit on there and they just measure all the activity. Whereas print seems to get the passive aspirational buyer, the person that opens up that ad, sees the views of the beach, sees a swimming pool, and begins a love affair with that property. Many times they cut out that ad, they have it sitting on their table, and every morning as they have breakfast with their spouse, they start having a romance with that property. So I think that the reason why print's important is that you get less buyers, but you seem to get better buyers. And here's the big one. Print seems to get older buyers. And older buyers have got more cash.
Yep.
So that's the long answer. I think that you actually need great print, you need great internet, and great internet means not being on the internet, it means being towards the front of the websites. Because most of your viewers, and I know you've got hundreds of thousands that get this email blog, would know that they've got ADD. They don't sit in front of a computer and scroll through 20 pages of search results. What they look at is the first page or second page. And Andrew, that costs money now on the internet. It used to be free, but now basically web portals have to work out who they're going to put towards the front. So basically being on page 1 or page 2 of the search results is the equivalent of having a full page ad versus having a small ad.
Yep, absolutely. And Tom, I'd just add to that, I agree with everything you just said. My observation is the internet's really good for active buyers, somebody who's out there determined to buy something, looking for something right now. What we find the print media does fine is the inactive buyer, the passive buyer who wasn't actually particularly looking, but when something was placed in front of him, he's suddenly gone, oh my goodness, that's the home for us. And in fact, this very penthouse was sold to a person who was not looking to buy a penthouse, but was looking through the Gold Coast Bulletin one Saturday morning, having a cup of coffee, came across the picture of the property, said, we've got to go and have a look at that, and subsequently became the buyer. And so I think it is a great combination of both, as you've just said, that ensures that you've been able to find every buyer in the marketplace at any one time.
Well, I can tell you recently Rupert Murdoch, in one of his talk, addressed the issue of that, and he himself ended up somehow buying a winery that he had no intentions to buy, because he's opened up one of the publications at a double page spread on a property, and he was not a buyer. He was not sitting there getting email alerts. He was not there on realestate.com. He's what you just described, the person that's not looking to buy, that falls in love with something, pays a premium price. He'd hate for me saying it, but that's what most passive buyers do, because they're not sitting there like you're saying. An active person is rational. They've got a calculator next to them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Tom. I really appreciate you taking time out to spend some time with us today. And I do appreciate you joining in and watching the interview with Tom. It's been quite fascinating. By the way, I know many people are fascinated when they see properties such as this here on the Gold Coast. This particular penthouse has sold, but if you're in the market for a penthouse in an adjoining building, we've just listed another one. So please let us know and we'll only be too happy to help you. That's it for now. Thank you very much for your time and see you in a fortnight.